that I say is a blessing. It's traditional in Judaism to bless God as the true judge. So I'll say the blessing, and then I'll say amen. Baruch atah Adonai, Eloheinu melech haolam, dayan ha'emet. Blessed are you, God, the righteous judge.
Amen.
And then we say, like Job said, in the biblical book of Job, Job had everything and lost everything and then found peace again. And Job said, Adonai natan va'Adonai lakach, v'hi shem Adonai yivarach. God gives us, God takes away, and we should be thankful for every single bit of it, both what's given to us and what's taken away. And so now, if you'll take your hand, and you can help if you need, just rip at the notches. There we go.
It's tough.
It's hard to do.
In the bottom?
Like they. I got it.
There we go. Oh, you got it? Let's see. No, it's easy.
Can I do it from the bottom?
No. You got it? There you go.
A righteous man, though he dies before his time, shall be at rest. For an honored old age does not depend upon length of time, nor is it measured by the number of one's years. For understanding is gray hair for a man, and a blameless life is old age. Being perfected in a little while, he fulfilled his long years. You should have a folder. In the folder is Psalm 23. We'll read together. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He has me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside the still waters. He guides
my soul. He leadeth me in the path of righteousness for his name's sake. Yea, I walk through the shadow of death.
will fear no evil. Your rod and your staff, they comfort me. You set a table in front of my enemies. You anoint my head with oil. My cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy shall follow me all the days of my life, and I shall abide in the house of God forever. Rabbi Tarfon, a famous scholar, said, "The day is short, and there is much work to be done. The laborers are sluggish, their reward is great, and the master of the house is insistent. You're not obliged to complete the task, but neither are you free to desist from it. If you have worked hard, your reward will be great. Your employer is dependable. He will reward you for your labor. Know that the righteous will be rewarded in the time to come." I love the line in this when I was talking to the family yesterday, and this is the piece I just read is about 1,500 years old, and I love the line thinking of what you guys said about your father. You are not obliged to complete the task, right? So as long as you start things and you start them with good intent, that's what matters. I spent a long time talking to the family yesterday and wanted to share a few words, remembrances that I heard, and then we're going to hear from Mindy and from cousin Gary. It's traditional that we share words about the person who died and learn a little bit more about their life and just think to ourselves what they meant to us. Lane Shore and his sister Rana grew up among cousins. His early life was filled with family picnics and meals at the homes of his aunts and uncles, all of the cousins laughing and joking around. Cousins described him as a real mama's boy, though the consensus was that if you needed a recipe, you went to a different member of the family. Lane thought his mother was the best cook. When he was 12, just 6 weeks before his bar mitzvah, his father, Hyman, died. In addition to being her biggest fan, Lane also became a protector to both his mother and his sister. Lane's mother, Sylvia, did her best to provide a sense of stability and normalcy. There was a wonderful party when Lane became bar mitzvah, but in keeping with Jewish tradition, there was no music. There was a hypnotist entertaining the crowd instead. That day, Lane just didn't become a man, he became the man of the house. He went to Senn High School, where he played football, which may explain his lifelong love of the Chicago Bears. And after that, on to Mayfair Junior College. The dozen cousins remained close throughout the years. The stories of his life are peppered with their adventures. While at junior college, he approved, or more accurately, disapproved of one of his cousin's suitors. At 6'2", a warning from Lane, and the other guy backed off. His aunts referred to him as a gentle giant. He didn't know his own strength. On one occasion, he was so happy to see one of them that his enthusiastic embrace broke 3 of her ribs. After junior college, Lane went on to DeVry. He began his career as an electric technician at Sears, a job he would hold for many years. Later, he found work as a loan officer. Lane spent many years chasing success. He was always looking for the newest or most interesting product to sell. The most notable of these was an enormous magnifying device that took up a great deal of room in the family garage. Rana described her brother as a dabbler. He worked in Uncle Moises' radio store. The basement of his home was filled with stereo equipment, speakers, anything and everything that had to do with music. He enjoyed fixing old radios and often had several home projects in progress at one time. Mindy remembers him building a giant menorah for their Me and My Dad group. When asked what brought Lane joy, everyone quickly replied, family. He and Debbie were married for 32 years. The wedding, like the bar mitzvah years before, was beautiful. They honeymooned in Hawaii. Lane wanted to see all of the sights and do everything there was to do on the island, while Debbie would have preferred to just sit on the beach or relax by the pool. In the end, Lane cajoled Debbie to try every activity. Lane liked to bowl and would go bowling with a big crowd of cousins in tow. His mother-in-law gave him a bowling ball as a wedding gift. Lane loved his kids. He loved Hannah and Mindy with all of his soul. He was a real family guy. They remember that before they were able to drive, their father always volunteered for the late driving shift if one of his daughters went out to the movies or another teenage activity with friends. And it wasn't simply because he wasn't a great sleeper, a trait he shares with Hannah. He didn't want to miss a moment with his kids. It wasn't an inconvenience. He would go out of his way to protect and care for the people he loved. Lane's family shared many stories on this theme. While most people like to relax in the peace and quiet of their backyards, Lane liked to sit in his front yard. He kept the lawn immaculate. It gave him a sense of pride. He loved watching the world go by. Mostly, though, he loved waiting for his family to come home. He would sit on the driveway when his daughters were older, making sure they got home safe. And when Debbie, Mindy, and Hannah were out together, before they turned onto their block, they would take bets as to whether their husband and father would be there. Most often, he was. His children also remembered the carnival-sized popcorn machine that was left by the previous owners when the Shapiros moved into their home. Debbie loved popcorn, so he would often make the trip to the basement to make a bowl just for her. Every year on the 4th of July, he would fill a big brown grocery bag with popcorn and let everyone serve themselves with giant red cups. He loved music, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass, big bands and big sounds. He followed the percussion line. He also liked the Beatles, but that was mostly because that was what Rana listened to. Lane loved everything transportation. His children remember being in a hotel on a family vacation and having their father point out different makes and models of airplane as they went by. He would do the same thing when they flew overhead at home. More than planes, he loved cars. He was especially enamored of GM and taught his sister how to tell the difference between its 62, 63, and 64 model just by looking at the headlights or taillights. His first car was a Buick Riviera. Boy, did he love that car. His family described him as a simple man. He loved his dogs, first Mouse, then Griffin. He loved white grape juice, watermelon, and pancakes. Truth is, he never made a carbohydrate he didn't like. He loved Jewish humor, and his favorite curses were in Yiddish. Not everyone understood his jokes, but if you were one of the people that did, you laughed hard. Passover is less than 2 weeks away, and in Hebrew, the word for simple is tam. During the Passover Seder, we read about the 4 children, wise, wicked, simple, and the one who doesn't know how to ask. In the context of the Seder, simple is not a compliment. But in the rest of the Jewish tradition, we admire people who are described as tamim, or simple. They take pleasure in ordinary things. They're faithful and hopeful and loyal. Lane Shapiro was a tam in the best sense of the word. May he rest in peace. We're going to hear a few words now from Mindy, and then one of many cousins, Gary.
Thank you all for being here. My dad had a tendency to keep to himself, especially in his later years, but I know he really would have appreciated you all being here. When I was 7 or 8, together, my dad and I joined me and my dad, a program through the JCC that planned events for girls and their fathers. During a winter season with the group, he volunteered to construct a menorah that would become a sort of mascot for the group and be present at each meeting and event. My dad, being the handy person that he was, got to work in the garage on what was probably the world's largest menorah. It would take up the whole seat next to me in the back seat of his Buick LeSabre. When the menorah made its debut at the first meeting, all the girls and their dads signed each branch with enough room to spare should the group expand. The theme of my dad building things much too large continued throughout my childhood. There was the plant project in 3rd grade where each student had to build a theme plant of some kind. Most kids made something out of paper or clay that would sit on their desk. But my dad built me a 4-foot wooden disco-themed plant, complete with CDs as its petals to make it look like a disco ball. Then, of course, there was one Valentine's Day when we all had to bring in a mailbox to collect our Valentines in. And my dad created me the sturdiest, heaviest, and largest mailbox, putting all those other kids and probably all of your mailboxes to shame. For much of my life, we didn't see eye to eye, and I think we both often wished things were different. He wanted so much from life that just never seemed to pan out, getting involved in sort of get-rich-quick schemes that never came to fruition. And while it frustrated me growing up, looking back on it now, you really have to hand it to him, and his continued optimism through each new endeavor. I think we can all learn from that. In college, my junior year, I went on my birthright trip to Israel, and I wrote a note, and I stuck it in the Western Wall filled with all of my hopes and dreams for the future, and one of them being peace for my dad. I just know he'd been fighting for things mentally for as long as I can remember. this week in the hospital after he passed, the chaplain came in and started doing all of her tasks. And one of the things that she told us is that in Hebrew and Jewish faith, hearing is the last thing to go after someone dies. Now, I don't know if this necessarily applies here, since my dad was already losing his hearing when he was alive, and refused to wear his hearing aids. And I'm sure by this point I've sort of lost the window of time that you can hear things. But I just want to say, it's okay, Dad.
Okay, I just want to be brief too. Thank you all. My cousin was a lot of things. He was hot and cold. He was probably my first guardian angel. He would take me when I had a knee problem. He was always there to take me to the doctors and to rehab. I know he loved his cars. He liked his big cars. I know he had a Buick first, but then he got into the Oldsmobile Toronado, and he loved the fact that it had front-wheel drive and the whole front seat, no hump, so he had plenty of room to move around in that car. And he liked to take drives. We would take drives. He wanted to go and visit places, and maybe 5 years ago, I don't remember, he went back. He took me back so I could see where I grew up next to him on Oakley, and we went and saw their old place on Oakley and the neighborhood, which has changed a little bit, but went to his building, and he was in love with the fact that he had this large antenna on the top of the building, and he can get sporting events when they were blacked out from other cities, and we would watch the Bears and the Blackhawks over there. And I spent some time in his later years, he'd like to go out for breakfast. He had this thing about wanting to be healthy, and he had a few spots that would make breakfast that were healthier, and he would love to go there, and we would chat and do that. And I just remember him as being there, and a compassionate guy. I mean, he can get on the subject and really dig into it, and then he can also tick you off because he wasn't really looking at your side of it, but he was compassionate about a few things. And he loved his electronics. He had one of the best setups that I've ever seen for playing stereo, and these large speakers that he was always proud of that could bounce you out of the house. And he was just a great guy. I have great memories of him. I have great memories of all of us cousins being together, the Bow Woods, and things way in the past that, no longer available now. But Lane, I just want to say, I'm sure you're up there with your mom and dad now, and I love you. Thanks.
So before this morning, I knew that he went to Senn High School, but I didn't know just how closely we lived. So I live less than a mile away from the old house now, and I grew up about a mile and a half away. And I'm a little bit younger, but I have to say that we who grew up in that old neighborhood, whenever I see someone, who I grew up with who moved away, that neighborhood was something special. People who were born and raised in that neighborhood were just a different kind, and a kind of person, like you said, you needed something, there I am. He and I also had in common a Buick LeSabre, and I have to say, anyone who could parallel park a Buick LeSabre on a city street, that was one great kind of a person. Not an easy task. The mysteries of life and death are beyond human understanding. We're perplexed and overwhelmed when pain and anguish befall those whom we love. In sorrow, confronted by death which has taken our husband, our father, our brother, our cousin, our friend. From our midst we feel frailty. Like delicate flowers, we flourish only for a day. Grant solace and comfort unto those who mourn. May their lives together help to sustain them and add to the blessing which is theirs in the memory of the life of their beloved Lane. In the valley of the shadow of death, beside the still waters and green pastures, you, O God, are our shepherd. Be our strength and our shield, our stay and our comfort through all our days. And together we say, Amen. In a moment, I'm going to ask you all to please rise for El Malei Rachamim. But before we do, having heard the memories and the stories of others, I just ask you to take a moment to yourself and think silently of all of your memories of Lane before we rise together with one last prayer for this morning. Please rise if you're able. El Malei Rachamim, Shochen Bamromim, Hamtzeh Menucha Nechona, Tachat Kanfei Ashchina, B'malot Kiddushim Utehorim, Kizhor Harakia, Masirim, Et Nishma Len Shapiro Shahalach La'olamo. O God, exalted and full of compassion, grant perfect peace in your sheltering presence among the holy and pure to the soul of Lane, who has gone to his eternal home. God of mercy, we ask you, remember all the worthy and righteous deeds that he performed while he was alive. May his soul be bound up in the bond of eternal life. God is his portion. May he rest in peace. Let us say, Amen. You can be seated.
Friends, this concludes this portion of the service. The interment will continue at Menorah Gardens in Broadview. Following the interment, the family will be together today from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. at the Hospitality Room at 51 Old Oak Drive in Buffalo Grove. Again, that's today from 4 p.m. to 8 p.m. And that information is available inside the folders you receive today as you arrive. And for those of you joining us via the live stream, that's also available on our website as well. For those of you who will be joining us in procession to the cemetery, we'll ask that you please keep a few safety measures in mind. Please make sure that you have your bright headlights and your hazard lights on at all times in the procession. Please obtain an orange funeral safety sticker to place on the passenger side of your front windshield. And also, please take care as we're making our way through intersections. We'll ask you to follow the car in front of you as closely as possible. Again, especially as we make our way through intersections and through the tolls, as we will be taking the toll route to the cemetery. The following have been asked to act as pallbearers today. When I say your name, I'll ask you to come forward. Ben Herber, Gary Bittenfield, Scott Fishkin, and Don Hertzberg. At this time, if everyone would please rise. Pallbearers, please come forward. We'll escort the family, the casket, and the clergy from the chapel.